Hello, and welcome to Unsheathed with your hosts, Kyle Gold and Cam Hirosaki. We hope that you enjoy the program. Please stick around afterwards. There'll be cake and blowjobs.
Good evening. Welcome to Unsheathed number 29. We're coming to you live from Furry Fiesta in scenic Dallas, Texas. We have an audience in front of us. I'm Kyle Gold. With me is...
I am vibrating Cam Hirosaki.
You're supposed to be non-vibrating. That was the whole point.
Okay, I'm done.
And with us is a furry publisher and podcaster, and famous podcaster, Fuzzwolf.
Hello, I'm Fuzzwolf.
And we got a whole 2-hour block here, which I don't know if we're going to use all of, but we're going to talk to Fuzzwolf a little bit. He's the head of FurPlanet Publishing. And we're going to take some questions from the nice people out here in the audience and generally have a good time. So, welcome. And Fuzz, tell us a little bit about FurPlanet. How did you get started with it?
Oh boy. Well, FurPlanet was originally started back in 2004, and at first it was the official store for FurNation, which was owned by Nexus. And around about end of 2007, I started thinking that I'd been helping him out with it for a couple of years. And I was really enjoying it, but I was thinking I would like to start doing this for myself. So maybe I'll start up my own publishing company. So I went to talk to him about this, and he was in sort of a transitionary period, and he was like, well, why don't you just buy FurPlanet? And
that's quite a transition.
Yeah. I was like, that sounds like a great idea, because FurPlanet's an established name. It has an established customer base, catalog of products, a stable of artists and writers. So rather than starting from nothing, I would actually start already kind of hitting the ground running, which is sort of like jumping into the cockpit of an airplane, when it's rapidly descending, and be like, okay, I got to literally hit the ground running here. And so things were a little hectic.
Not hit the ground if you jump into the cockpit of an airplane.
Not hit the ground, no. Things were a little hectic for the first year, but Tiernan and I officially took over in March of 2008. So we're coming up on 2 years of the two of us running FurPlanet.
Oh, congratulations. That's quite a milestone.
Thank you.
What kind of things have you tried to do with FurPlanet that, I know some of them, but talk about what your goals are with it.
Well, the neat thing about the way FurPlanet's set up is that rather than a traditional publisher, which would send out a book or a comic to an offset printer and have like 1,000 copies, or how many thousands of copies, depending on how big the product is, printed at once, and a lot of those end up getting pulped because you send them off to bookstores, they get sent back, etc. We're actually a print-on-demand operation, so we only print as many copies of something as we need to fill our orders and to properly prepare for conventions, which means we don't have the big initial outlay of cash, thousands of dollars to get 1,000 copies of something printed. So that allows us to print a wider variety of material, give more artists and writers a shot at actually getting their product out in the marketplace. So there's a lot of great stuff out there, but if you're doing it the traditional publishing route, you have to be really choosy about what you're going to put your time and invest your money in. But we can actually spread that out and give more people a shot at getting their work seen, which I think is a real benefit for us.
That's very cool, and I think it serves the community very well, because there's a lot of talent out there that maybe just needs a little bit of exposure to really get better and get noticed.
And you get your first couple books out there, and you start building an audience, and then people start coming by your dealer's table asking, when's the next issue of this coming out? When's the next novel by this author coming out? And it kind of slowly builds up like that, and so I think we're really helping out some of our writers here kind of get started out.
big plans do you have for the future that you could reveal to us exclusively on this live podcast?
Oh boy. I think we've already well talked about the cupcakes line since it premiered this weekend. So of course that's continuing, and we'll be doing.
I'm holding up a copy of
he's
Bridges
holding up,
here.
Kyle's holding up a
for those of
copy
you listening at home after the fact.
You can
show
see,
off
you can
to the
see the
audience.
Purdy Fox.
Very pretty fox.
This is a prop for later too.
Okay, good. So we'll
We're a
have 3 or
hands-on
4 of those a
podcast.
year. Also, we were working closely with Bad Dog Books, and we recently, Roar 2 was released a month ago at Further Confusion, and the editor has just put out a call for submissions for Roar 3.
Cool.
And that's going to have the theme of that is moments and writing around a single moment and how it can have a big effect and turn a situation. And I'll probably have more information on that for you later. And I know we're also they're also working on Fang 4. And I'm trying to think of anything else we've kind of got in the works.
Are you doing anything like coming up, trying to do new venues, new like electronic publishing, or going out to different conventions or anything like that?
Yeah, we're actually Tyrion and I have completely lost our minds and decided to,
As opposed to when you decided to buy FurPlanet?
Yeah, that was the first half of losing our minds, and the second half is greatly expanding the number of conventions that we make an appearance at. We've been doing 5 or 6 cons a year recently. This year, I think we're doing 12 altogether. We're splitting it up, though. There'll be a couple of cons that I'm at and he's not, and a couple of cons that Tyrion's taking the company to, and I'll be staying at home. But, I mean, we're going to be doing Rainforest for the first time. I've just confirmed that we have 2 dealer tables at FA United, so that'll be the first time we're at that con.
Cool.
Gosh, I'm trying to remember all the other ones now. I think we're doing Rocky Mountain Fur Con again as well.
Awesome. I think we should be there too, so we'll look forward to seeing you there.
Great.
Yeah, I was going to say if there were any in particular that you wanted to list off for the people at home so they know where to find you
us
if you go to their local convention.
We're also going to be hitting Fur Fright for the first time this year
Awesome.
as well. Well, first time as dealers. Tyrion and I have attended once before, but that was years ago, and it has really grown since then.
I was amazed when I heard how big it had gotten.
Yeah,
actually.
it was like a 2-day party basically back when we went to it. Now
I think there were over 1,000 people.
Yeah,
yeah,
there are.
it's like a 3-day massive con now.
I didn't know. I didn't know.
Three-day massive
I didn't know
con.
Connecticut could fit that many people.
That we'll just make a new con called
Well,
Massive Con.
it's a whole New England area con.
Yeah, pretty much.
Connecticut doesn't count. I'm teasing.
I'm pretty
That's
sure
just
all
you
of
Japanese have no
New
knowledge
England-
of U.S. geography.
Connecticut's near Wyoming, right?
Yes.
So that's our one of our big agendas this year. We're also working on trying to kind of get the name out there a little bit more. Even though FurPlanet's been around as a name since '04, it's sort of like not a lot of people kind of knew it was there for a long time. So I've been working on banner ads on FA and getting ads into con books, and part of that effort is going to more conventions and making our presence known there and reaching people that maybe not everybody can go to AC, even though it's a huge con and a lot of people are there. But you go to Rainforest, I'm pretty sure I'm going to meet a ton of people I've never seen at a convention before, and
Yeah, definitely.
that's a good thing for a dealer.
Yeah, that's great. Anything else you want to say? Offhand? The no is okay for right now. We can chat. and if you,
I'm thinking of other things I want to say. Well, maybe for the folks listening at home, when we first started out, the majority of our catalog was gay erotica, and
nothing wrong with
I
that.
should
That's what
point
this
out-
podcast is all about.
I should point out I do not have a problem with that at all. However, I am interested in expanding our range to kind of have a little bit of this, a little bit of that. So we're slowly adding more non-erotic material, and we're adding some straight erotica also. So I just want to work on making FurPlanet something where I'm trying to represent, every kind of genre orientation, something for everyone.
One of the other things about FurPlanet that I think is very cool is that you're not just a publisher, but you also serve as a distributor. So you carry books from Dark Horse, you carry books from Fuzzwolf, you carry books from, well, you're primarily the publisher of Bad Dog, but you carry their books as well. But you'll carry other lines and take them out to conventions.
I've noticed that a lot of the companies like that in the furry fandom, their customer bases seem to be somewhat compartmentalized. Like, I'm sure that Fuzzwolf have customers that only know that Fuzzwolf exists, and the same with FurPlanet, the same with Rabbit Valley. So there's a real benefit to kind of cross-selling there. And, you know, if I carry Fuzzwolf books, this con, we're carrying Rabbit Valley stuff as well. We'll probably be doing that again at some future cons. We're carrying Will Sanborn's stuff through Anthro Dreams, who does some other great anthologies. And I'd like to think that that's introducing our customers to some publications from the other companies there.
Yeah, I think there's actually a pretty significant nugget of truth to that, which I think was demonstrated pretty well when Kyle posted about Bridges, which is, you know, being published by FurPlanet, and there were a whole slew of comments of like, wait, like is Fuzzwolf going to be doing this? And it's like, no, there are people other than Fuzzwolf that can publish Kyle's stuff, really. And, you know, just sort of like there was some sort of like brand identity shock, I think, that people experience.
Right.
Which is natural. I mean, I've published most of my stuff through Fuzzwolf because I tended to publish novels, and they were the ones that were publishing novels when I started, so I kept publishing with them. But, yeah, definitely it's the way the Bridges came about, and I think we've talked about this on the podcast before, but just briefly, is it was a novella-length story, and I was talking with a couple other writers who also had novella-length stories, and then we got to talking to Fuzzwolf, and he said, hey, I'd love to publish some shorter works, which was something. Fuzzwolf has a very limited capacity for what they can publish in a year. And so we talked to Fuzzwolf and started Cupcakes through FurPlanet.
I think part of that is there's, you know, the mainstream world, there's that idea that, you know, Microsoft hates Apple.
Right.
And I think as consumers in the furry fandom, a lot of people think that there's some kind of weird rivalry between all the furry publishing companies. Because we actually had a guy at OklaCon. We had some copies of Granville, I think, and Out of Position sitting on our table. And it's actually a friend of mine was carrying it for me. I was away, and I came back, and he was like, I just had a really weird conversation with someone. He was like, oh, you're FurPlanet, huh? I bet you hate those guys at Fuzzwolf. And he's like, no, we're actually all really good friends. And the guy seemed, I don't know, either disappointed or somewhat shocked and just kind of wandered away.
And the thing about it is that there's far from too much reading material in the fandom right now. And the more any of us can convince people that books are worth picking up, the more everybody benefits. Because if somebody picks up one book from FurPlanet, they're going to be open to say, oh, what else is out there? And they're going to go to Fuzzwolf, and they're going to go to Rabbit Valley, and they're going to go to all these other places. And, you know, the same applies to anyone. People who are Fuzzwolf readers can find their books at FurPlanet, and then we'll see all the other stuff there. And it's what the goal, I think, of all the publishers is to reach as many people as possible, because the fandom right now, I think the last estimates I saw were somewhere between 100,000 and 200,000 people worldwide. And, you know,
I've seen higher, like 300,000, but I don't know how well sourced that information was.
And
but
I mean,
it's growing pretty quickly.
It's growing quickly, and there's a lot of those people that still aren't aware of books and writing out there, which is partly why we do this podcast. And actually, we mostly do this podcast because we have a good time doing it.
One thing I think really helped out this effort, and I want to compliment you, Kyle, is the Anthology X, involving, you know, so many different people. But you had Alex Vance write a story in that, and of course his author bio has a link to baddogbooks.com, and I wrote a story, and my author bio links to FurPlanet.com. So that's just one publication that is going to make people aware that there are other furry publishers out there, and all the authors have their writings and their links in there as well. So that's one example of, helping people know that, there's more than just FurWolf or just FurPlanet.
And that was actually part of the idea behind the anthology. So thank you. I'm glad it seems to have worked, at least to some extent. Is I knew a lot of authors that I considered to be really high quality authors, and I knew that their fan bases to some extent were compartmentalized, like you were saying. So White Yoda had his following, I had mine. Hirosaki-san's and mine kind of overlap, but I had to get him in the collection because he's too good.
I also lived down the street from him, so if I found out he was doing a book and didn't tell me, I would have just kind
Egged the house.
I was going to say threw a rock through your window.
I think you would have egged the house.
Okay.
Isn't that what you Japanese people do?
No
would you like ramen
stereotyping.
noodle the house?
But
Was there a question back there? Or? Okay.
no, so
He realizes your walls aren't made of paper. It's like, damn it didn't work.
no, I was just going to say, when you're dealing with something like that's already a niche market, it doesn't make sense to compete and try to fight over portions of what's already really limited. And like you were saying earlier, like when you sort of cooperate, everyone benefits from it.
Yeah, and I've yet to hear someone say, I love all the books from one place, but not from this other place. And we're all trying to put out the best works we can.
Well, that'd be really silly between FurPlanet and FurWolf, since you've been published by both of us.
Yeah, I know.
I'll be the Solomon, and I'll
straddling the fence, as it were.
legs
as uncomfortable
akimbo.
as that sounds.
Like a fox.
Like a fox.
Her.
Yeah.
So, before we kind of open things up to the audience, I wanted to ask people in the audience, how many of y'all have listened to our podcast before?
Nearly everybody.
Nearly everyone. And so for those of you who don't, basically Unsheathed is me and Hirosaki-san talking about generally writing erotica. If you are not familiar with us and like what you hear, or if you are familiar with us, you can help us out. We have these beautiful DVD audios that collected episodes 1 to 24. They also collected Unsheathed Presents numbers 1 and 2, which is me and Hirosaki-san reading embarrassing stories we wrote about each other, plus 2 bonus stories we read, and the lost episode of Anthropodcast with Flame Falcon, which he's never aired, but is on the DVD.
It's very entertaining.
And you can pick these up at the FurPlanet table in the dealer's room. It's $10. It goes to help defray the cost of all this equipment that you see up here on the table.
We talk about the 2009 football season and Daleks.
And
It's very amusing.
My Super Bowl pick, which was in Anthropodcast 21, was Colts Saints.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So where's
I did not correctly predict the winner, but I predicted the team. So
You got a golf clap.
I got a little clap for that.
we're psychic writers of furry adult material.
Oh God, if only.
The amusing thing for me about that episode, because I quite enjoyed listening to it, is listening to Flane saying, hey, we're going to take a break, and maybe someone will put a drop in here. Thanks for that great drop in, and now we're back.
Well, that was like going down and watching episodes of Jeopardy being filmed, where they film like 5 episodes back to back, and so in between the episodes, they go and change clothes, and so they'll come back in the next episode, and Alex will say something like, "Well, as we saw yesterday, this person did this," and I'm thinking that was 20 minutes ago.
Time is
it's
different
all done
for
with mirrors.
And for Doctor Who.
That's right.
So we're going to give you guys a chance to ask Fuzzwolf questions about FurPlanet, ask us questions about writing erotica, and we have a microphone, and I believe we have a Gopher Fox who's willing to take it around to let people ask questions.
That's not a weird hybrid thing, by the way, when he says Gopher Fox.
No, it's Gopher Fox with 2 Fs.
Yeah.
Foxes that burrow underground, destroy golf courses.
Now I'm getting story ideas.
And have weird teeth.
Everyone made fun of the Gopher
teeth.
Fox.
Blowjob unfriendly teeth.
Yes.
There's our reference. And, fair warning, if you don't ask questions, then we're just going to ramble on for like an hour about whatever comes to mind, and he's been drinking all night.
Yeah, and
I'm
I'm fueled by mojito and cold pizza.
I've got my Coke Zero with me, so I'm all caffeined up. So who wants to ask us something? Of course, the person furthest away from the microphone.
Come on down.
Come on down.
Runner!
Hi. Okay, my question is, I've been trying to write this story for an anthology, but it needs to be longer, and I'm trying to write a sex scene in it, but I'm completely blocked. Does that ever happen to you? Or, if so, how do you solve the problem?
Yeah, like when you're writing a story and you know that it's supposed to be for something erotic, it's like, oh yeah, I should probably have them fuck in here, huh?
Well, I know for a fact that Hirosaki-san was writing a story which included, I believe it was a blowjob scene.
Yeah.
And he took like a month to write the scene because he kept saying, I know I need to write this, and I can't make it fun. And I was thinking, how can you not make a blowjob fun? But he managed somehow.
Yeah.
On a Ferris wheel.
So, well, they
Okay,
go
that
up
would-
and
that
they go
would
down,
do
and
it.
they go up and down. And,
It's a meta blowjob.
It helps with the natural motion.
so how did you solve that?
Well, again, I think this is where we sort of like to have this philosophy where the erotica serves the story, and if what you're trying to shoehorn in there doesn't serve the story, then maybe that's a cause to sort of re-examine what you're trying to do, and if there's another place where it would fit better, maybe that might help give you some sort of not inspiration, but at least prompt you to think of if there's a better point in the story to include this scene that might give you a better lead in and have some different momentum.
And I'd also say on top of that, if you're having difficulty with the sex scene, it might be that you're trying to include too much detail, that you're trying to get not just from point A to point C, but
Nice.
We know what point C stands for, don't we?
but you're trying to go point A to B to C to D to E to F to G, and you're trying to detail every single step, and you may just want to say, they did this for a while, and then eventually, and if it's giving you trouble, just shorthand through it, spare the detail, and get past it, and go back to it when you have filled it out in your head. I'm trying to make Zia turn red because it happens really easily, and it's starting now.
Here's what you do. You write down the words in and out, and you copy and paste for a page and a half and hit a period. Done.
I would say you should just draw on your vast wealth of experience and pull out a cherished memory and try to write that down.
Or find a picture on FA that most closely resembles the scene that you want to write. Then do your best to describe it while making sure both of your hands never leave the keyboard. And use the frustration to inspire you to write as quick and as hard and as fast as you can.
Quick and hard and fast is not always the best way, though. You might want to write slow and deliberate. Take it easy and enjoy yourself while you're writing it.
This is
I have to take a break.
Is he red enough? Can we move on to another question?
He's matching his sweater. I think we can move on.
He is.
Oh, and he gets a high five, too.
He
Excellent.
does.
Thank you, Zia.
He's always a good sport.
Oh, okay.
We have another victim.
Oh,
Someone's
wow.
going to get hung with that microphone cord by the end of the night.
You said hung.
Hello? So,
No more mojitos for you. Sorry.
Bell's theorem allowed local hidden variable theories to be experimentally tested and then discarded. But there's still some non-local hidden variable theories out there. So my question is, what do you think of determinism in quantum mechanics? And how hard should you try to make sure that the occupations and settings that your characters are in are realistic?
Well, I believe that you cannot always know all the variables in a sex scene. So if you're describing the motion, then you cannot be describing the location.
Yeah.
All right.
Or like,
If
if the cock is inside the fox, you don't know if it's gotten off or not until you take it out. And they actually observe it.
But the act of observing also changes the scene.
Yes. how depending how keenly you observe definitely affects the results. And if they know you're observing.
And I believe they actually covered this on Notcast last night with is the dick in the box alive or dead? You don't know until you open the box.
And all I remember was something about spiders.
Yeah.
It's a very unsexy scene.
It's the clock spider. Never mind.
I
you have a
gotta
follow-up to
include
that?
clock spiders in my next story.
Well, the second half of it, which I kind of snuck after the stuff that didn't make a ton of sense, which the inspiration for which you can, by the way, you can look to the left and find out. But I'm writing a lot of stuff I don't know about, not specifically sex, but like people in occupations that I don't know a whole lot about, or I write sci-fi where nobody really knows how this would work. So when you're not 100% sure how something would work, how hard do you, like, at what point do you do research, and what point do you just kind of fudge it and say, let the reader figure out whether it makes sense or not?
We just actually did a Write an Erotica panel before this podcast in which I stressed the importance of personal experience. Be safe, boys and girls. But I've found in things like that, in world building where you have to make up stuff, I've had several experiences in my writing where I made up things because I figured this is how people would behave in this situation, and then later uncovered a situation that was similar and found that people did actually do what I'd made up. So when you've done that a few times, you kind of get a little bit of confidence and you think, well, even if this isn't realistic, it's my world. I can make up whatever I need to make up. Research is great, but it's also great for procrastinating your actual writing. You can get lost in research for days and days and days on end.
Wikipedia is a black hole.
And not just research and personal experience in erotica, which you can also get lost in for days and months on end.
Yeah. I was going to say, don't make stuff up if you're writing about guns, because people who are into guns will come down on you like the wrath of God if you get it wrong.
Well, there's an interesting point to that, though. I think there are enough people that really care about guns that they will call you out on it.
Yeah.
But you have to ask yourself, is it worth me doing a week's worth of research to get this exactly right? Or do I want to just say, I don't care, and people who, are fanatical about whatever it is, they're going to call me out on it, and the other 99% of the people who read the book are not going to notice or care. You have anything to add, Fuzz?
Yeah. Oh. I think it is possible to write about, with sex scenes anyway, it's possible to write about what you haven't had personal experience with. So I've written a couple particular kink stories, kinks that I don't share, but it was a story trade with somebody, so I wrote them, and getting into the heads of the characters, I was able to sort of place myself there enough to get through writing the story, and it actually turned out pretty good without actually having to go and do those things that I may not be into. With more technical aspects like that, I don't have any. So I'm a little at a disadvantage there because I haven't written a lot of really plot-driven stories. But with sci-fi, though, I mean, that's like a blank slate. I mean, you can create your own world, and you don't want to go completely crazy about it, but you can take certain liberties with that. And like you're saying, it's you build your own world. But have you ever seen Thank You for Smoking?
Sadly not.
It's on my list.
Okay, there's a scene where this marketing exec is trying to pitch to the smoking rep cigarettes in space. It's the final frontier, right? And the smoking rep goes, wouldn't that be a bad idea in an oxygen-rich environment? And the guy's like, oh, we just write that off in one line. Thank God we developed the whatever device. So, There you go. And it's a one, if that story actually existed, it is a one-line fix to a problem. If you really need your character smoking on a spaceship, you're solving the problem.
But as I think was mentioned on the podcast once before, you're only allowed to do that once per story.
Yeah, I think we've said that.
Is that the MacGuffin effect?
And, I wrote a whole novel that takes place inside the world of college and professional football, which those of you here at the live podcast can probably pretty easily see I've never actually played. But I've read enough insider articles, I've read interviews with players, I've read enough of that to get a sense of what the world is like. I skip out on details that I don't know about. I try to incorporate new things as I find them out. Someone who's been immersed in that world would probably be able to tell within a paragraph that I'm not writing from a position of personal knowledge, but I don't know if any of those people have actually read the book. So
It would be awesome if they have.
Well, actually, I do have a high school player who plays. He plays on the defense. I don't remember if he plays Dev's position, but he he plays football. He's going to a Division II college, and he has a boyfriend who's a Fox, who gave him the book. So
you have to be a tiger now.
It was all very I think he has to
live your life according to this, or else.
So now I have to write a happy ending.
Does his boyfriend sometimes dress like a girl?
I didn't ask. That's between them. And
if he does, can you give his email address to Fuzzwolf?
Pixar, it didn't happen.
So, is that good? All right.
Yes.
Come over to the microphone.
Help our Gopher Fox out here.
As he flauntily bounces to and fro.
When you use a sci-fi environment for a story, how hard is it to avoid sort of just borrowing from someone else's universe? Not intentionally, where you'd say something specific, but just you sort of get lazy and you just sort of slide into an established setting?
There's certain established sci-fi conventions that you're going to use, and it's really tough to say whether you're borrowing from someone else's universe. If you say something like faster than light drive, that's a sci-fi convention. If you say something specific, what was that? Dilithium crystals. Right. If you use dilithium crystals, then you're borrowing from a universe. But I guess the same applies to erotica too, borrowing conventions and ways of doing things. But there's a line between sort of the common discourse of the medium, of the genre, and what people have invented specifically for the world. And sometimes things people invented specifically for the world become common because so many people like the idea and copy it.
Yeah.
To use I don't know if this really counts, but the proliferation of non-human genitals in pictures was sort of started by one artist and then spread throughout, and that wasn't really something that you could say other people copied from them, but it certainly started after they started putting it in.
It became a meme in the original sense of the word, not in like the internet meme sense of the word.
Right.
Yeah, I think I actually had a situation like that. The story I wrote in X, I got 3/4 of the way through it and realized, shit, this character is a lot like a replicant from Blade Runner. And that wasn't intentional, but the whole idea of a created person or a programmed cyborg or a robot or something like that is a sci-fi convention.
And I'm glad you took out the scene where he gouged out the eyes of the other character.
And then, like, Edward James sexy. Olmos is leaving, like, origami unicorns. And
But I think there is enough original story around that general concept that it worked all right.
And I think if you called them replicants, it would have been different.
Yeah, that's a Blade Runner word.
Yeah,
so.
but the whole idea of a cyborg or an artificial person is something that you can't really copyright. It's just so common.
Yeah, because I mean, there's concepts that are just broad enough that it's like you said, like faster than light travel. I mean, that's something that doesn't exist. It's been created mostly just for fictional purposes, and there's really no way anyone can call you on quote unquote stealing that idea from someone else. But I mean, if you end up halfway through a sex scene and suddenly we're in Galactica CIC, I mean, then we have a problem.
Who's next? Come on.
Don't be shy.
Don't make us ramble. Over there.
Don't make us ramble. I swear to God, we'll ramble.
I swear to God, we'll talk about nothing.
Like an episode of Seinfeld.
Greetings.
Only with blowjobs.
I have a question about how you use descriptors. And how you get ideas for them.
How do we use
descriptors? Describing words.
Describing things.
Adjectives, I think. Something.
One of the exercises that we've had suggested in workshops is to carry a notebook around and write down descriptions of just everyday events. Like you're sitting on the bus, write a paragraph about the person in front of you. Write a paragraph about the bus. And try to figure out how to describe it such that when you're reading it later, it evokes the right things to bring that scene back to you. I would not suggest you stop in the middle of sex to write down a paragraph about how it feels, but perhaps...
If your brain is working that well in the middle of sex, by the way, yeah.
Just pop the laptop
you're
up
a
on
writer.
your partner's back. Oh, there you go.
Nicely said.
But it's certainly the kind of thing where you can look back on something and say, what stood out to me about that, and how would I describe that? The other thing you do is read. Read other people. Find out how other people describe things.
Yeah, like if you ever want to just figure out, like get a list of new adjectives, look at the descriptions that vineyards give to their wines, and I guarantee you'll be like, wow, I've never heard that before. That's certainly a way to describe something.
The fox was fruity with a nice bell pepper aroma.
with hints of black currant and forest floor.
Ah, yes. This well-balanced wolf, rich with flavors of blackberry, cocoa, and clove. Enjoy this wolf with roast beef.
So that's
I have to take a break.
That's a bull, wolf, fox three-way. More wine. More wine.
I'm in the minority here. We have two wolves, an otter and a fox.
Well, you still have the canid majority.
That's true. Yeah, it's describing things is one of those things that you practice. You write something, you see if it sounds right. If it doesn't sound quite right, it nags at you, and you think about it for days on end until you figure out the right way to say it. You read other books, you shamelessly copy from other people and how they describe things, and you learn. You pick it up as you go along. That's not a tremendously helpful answer, but...
Yeah, read.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah. Someone
read
said
FurPlanet books.
You can't... Yeah, order from FurPlanet and then read them.
Read
you can't
more,
write
MOAR.
unless you read.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What else do people want to hear about? If you don't have questions, what would you like to hear us talk about for a while? Like to hear us talk about our writing, or
we got a raised paw on the corner.
we do have a paw over there, and then I think we had another one over here. It's good.
Hey guys.
Hey, Drans.
On the topic of science fiction, you guys have talked a lot about different books you've read in the past. I think at one point you mentioned David Weber, who does the Honor Harrington series, which I personally like a lot. I've read lots of Star Wars and Star Trek and everything else. I notice personally that it seems like a lot of sci-fi tries to make things accessible, or Battlestar Galactica is a good example, where they give you a setting where everything looks kind of similar, it's just in space. So there's mechanics. It looks like they might as well be working on cars and stuff. I was wondering if you had any good examples of where you thought sci-fi was made, like you have a difficult idea to express. Like think about Ender's Game. How did Orson Scott Card describe Ender's Game and make it really accessible, where he's telling this crazy story of stuff you can't even imagine if you would have started at the very beginning, or the end of the story, where he's talking about the Dr. Doom machine, whatever.
Right.
How do you build that up, or what kind of neat tricks can you use?
And if you ever go to the TV tropes over on the internet, one of their big tropes is the ... in space. just to show, how often that you just take this, like, it's like this, but it's in space.
And News Radio, a sitcom back in the 90s, did a great episode that was News Radio in space. And Phil Hartman introduces it by saying, what would it be like if News Radio took place in space? If instead of a radio station, we were on a space station. And instead of reporting the news, we reported the space news. And they riff on that for 30 minutes, and it's great. And we miss Phil Hartman.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so to find a way to... And I guess this is sort of something that actually applies really well to if you're going to be doing like a furry setting, where one of the things that, when you're writing is you need to get the reader to identify with what you're talking about. And if you're dealing with anything, it doesn't necessarily have to be furry, but if it's something like Alien or whatnot, where you have like a non-human protagonist, you need to find ways to emphasize the aspects that you want to have emphasized in a way that the reader will pick up on that and will be able to follow and go, okay, I have a baseline for understanding why I'm supposed to care. Applying that to the setting and story isn't too different, as long as you have some way to anchor the reader's expectations on at least one level, and as long as you can keep them grounded at least in part, you can sort of change the other things and make them weird and different, as long as they have someplace to come back to. Once you start, if you have nothing that's on a level that a reader's going to identify with, it's just going to kind of turn into nonsense, which I have read things that I would say fall into that category.
One of the things, the main thing that you do is you focus on the characters and their experiences, because ultimately the reader has to identify with the characters. One of the things Scott Card did in Ender's Game is he starts Ender out in a very familiar environment. He's in a schoolyard. His parents are, he's in a schoolyard, he comes home, he's in a fight, he comes home. There's a weird thing about him being a third, which you kind of get, and he never really fully explains until a little bit later. But then Ender is yanked out of this familiar environment, and he's put on a cruiser, and he sort of knows where he's going, but not really. So he's learning about all these weird things at the same time as the reader is. That's a really common device to introduce bizarre worlds, is take someone who's not familiar with the world and throw them into it. So all the things that the reader needs to know to get around in the world, this character has to know, and the reader feels the empathy of the character being tossed into this unfamiliar situation.
It's a very common device in Japanese anime.
Yes.
What is?
And Scott Card did another, in Speaker for the Dead, talked a lot about the experience of humans relating to near humans, relating to aliens that we could sort of understand, relating to a different kind of alien that we had nothing in common with, which is a great story in and of itself, but it's also a great primer for dealing with these different kind of alien races and stuff. Anything else from down here? We had somebody over here next. Up there? Our gopher is Ski Fox, who is valiantly helping us out, running around the panel room with a microphone.
This may be similar to an earlier question, but what I was wondering is what's the best way to find the middle ground between what is commonly known as purple prose and brown prose, that being over-descriptive or being lack of descriptive in certain situations or items in certain scenes?
Well, okay, so I think that really it's less of a crime to be under-descriptive than it is to be over-descriptive. So err on the side of less is more in almost any case. I think that what Kyle was mentioning earlier, where you stop moving things forward because you're just continually just sort of like loading words on top of each other and not propelling things forward, that's when you should probably re-examine things and realize, okay, what can I pare down and how can I make things move along to make my point more quickly and succinctly.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. There's one of the great things about books and radio as opposed to film and TV is it's use a cliched quote, it's the theater of the mind. Radio plays have better special effects than anything Hollywood can put out because it's all in your head. And the same can be true of books. If you don't want blank characters in a blank universe surrounded just by nothingness, but you don't have to describe everything in exacting detail. Just give it enough to feel real, but the focus is really on your characters and building up their personalities and what they're doing.
For example, Hirosaki-san and I may or may not have done several podcast episodes without pants.
Yeah.
We've mentioned that in the past, and our listeners are free to imagine whatever they like. Assisted by the lovely cover art on our DVDs.
Just wonderful cover art, by the way.
Done by our friend Bobby No.
Yes.
That's how his name's pronounced. Yeah, I think we said this in the previous panel maybe, but if you're boring yourself with your description, then you're describing too much. I usually tend to err on the side of not describing enough, and then I have to go back and actually read what I've written and say, well, in my mind, I know that they took all their clothes off between here and there, but I never actually said that in the prose, so maybe I should throw in a sentence or two about it. And you want to... It gets back to balance, and just, like these guys were saying, just put in the critical details, the things that really stand out, the things that shape the scene, because everybody's going to have a picture in their mind if you say the wolf hugs the fox. Everybody is imagining something. So what is different about this particular time? The wolf hugs the fox from behind. The wolf hugs the fox with claws going through his back fur and scritching. Whatever. Put in just enough detail, and as I'm saying that, you guys are all changing the little pictures that you had in your head when I said it the first time to accommodate this extra detail. So build that up in your head that way, and put in the descriptions that really make a difference.
Yeah, I mean, if you then turn that into, the wolf hugged the fox's slender, vulpine frame with his big, strong,
Except
canine.
if you say foxes and vulpine in the same sentence, you should not do that.
You shouldn't, but I see it. But actually another, especially a key point for us, and I actually see this a lot, is over-description of furry characters in general. I mean, a reader is going to be able to imagine what a two-legged fox person looks like, and a furry reader definitely already knows what that looks like. You really don't need to over-describe. Again, like Kyle was saying, if you're boring yourself, that's a bad sign. If if you're going to skip, I know what an anthropomorphic fox looks like. Don't spend 3 paragraphs telling me.
And if you go back through, because it's easy to get caught up in describing, especially if you've done a lot of online role-playing and you have to write out the description and you're used to being on Furry Monk or Tapestries or what have you, and your descriptions are 3 pages long because you want to describe the special mother-of-pearl buttons on the shirt collar that were farmed from an oyster farm off the coast of something or another. But it's easy to get caught up in writing all the little details. But then if you go back through after you've written the story and you're like, okay, and then we get to the part where we describe, and I'm going to skip forward a page to this, then you should tighten it up.
I noticed a neat example of this on the net. I don't know if y'all have seen this. I'm a member of hardblush.com, which is Anta's pay site.
Bless you.
And he had a comic series. It was a horse fucking a dog. And somebody had pointed out, oh, wow, he could take a horse cock without any lube or without douching or anything like that. And Anta got a little irritated by this, and he posted 3 sketched pages to FurAffinity of that missing scene. So you've got so the dog's like, just a minute, I'll be right back, and then the horse sits on the couch, and you hear singing in the background as he's presumably douching, and then the horse picking up a magazine, flipping. It's 3 pages of nothing. Okay, I'm ready now. It's a good visual example of why you don't have to write absolutely. We know that you would stretch and use lube if you're about to have anal sex in real life. If you're making a hot porn scene, you may or may not actually have to put every detail like that in there.
Yeah, it's been a while since I watched porn movies, but even in reverse, I'm betting they don't show most of that.
Yeah, I have a story called Starting from Scratch, which is about 2 college-age people who get together and they have sex together for the first time. And I really tried to describe, this is how awkward, first-time sex can be. And I got a lot of comments of, yeah, that was just too awkward to be hot. Like, I empathize with that way too much to enjoy it. It's like...
And that's...
Well done.
Yeah, and that's if you're trying to emphasize that point of the scene, if you're just trying to write something hot, don't write in all of the prep and all of that stuff. But if you're trying to emphasize the way these 2 characters interact, maybe one of them is just like, all right, let's get to it. And the other one's like, well, hold on, I have to do this, I have to do that, you have to be clean, I have to be clean, we have to wash. And, I've known people in real life who were both ways. And, someone was just like, whatever, it's sex, it's going to be messy, let's get to it. And the other one's like, well, no, we got to shower, and then you have to douche, and then we have to do this, and then we have to do that. And so if you want to show that conflict, that's a great way to do that and include those details. But if you're just saying it's 2 people who know each other and they know what it's all about.
It's like paragraph break, and then they were fucking.
Right. Just like all the other times.
It was just as cold and intractable. All of the feigned enjoyment and pretensions of love. I should stop now, huh?
You really enjoyed Valentine's Day, didn't you?
No comment.
Love is dead. Coming soon from Cam Hirosaki.
I'm going to drown my sorrows in more alcohol now. No.
No, you're just going to have more alcohol. You're not drowning sorrows in them.
I am not full of any sorrows. I promise
You're full
you
of
that.
Alcohol.
I am full of alcohol and not full of sorrow.
He's full of alcohol and words.
But
we're all full of words.
I'm on a podcast. I'm supposed to be full of words.
We're all full of words.
That's why we're writers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's why I write, because I'm so full of words that if I don't put them on the page, I'll just...
You get backed
explode.
up.
Yeah, I will.
We get backed up, and then we get cranky, and, well, who has something else for us to talk about?
Please misdirect
Please. Mr. Wu Wei in the second row.
So Shore's algorithm. No, I'm not going to do that.
Bring on the particle physics.
No. So you've got a character who does
Are foxes
bad
waves or particles?
things, but you don't want them to be totally unlikable. So what sort of things do you do to have the reader stick through them and not just be thinking, oh, it's a pain in the ass to have to read about this person again because, they were a jerk here and they were a jerk here and I don't like them anymore.
Yeah, if you make the conflict interesting and you make the reader care about what the outcome of what they're doing is, then that's, step one to, at least making, what they're reading interesting.
Everyone does bad things at some point in their lives. Everyone's cut in front of that guy on the highway, cut off someone that was going not fast enough for you, not stopped for somebody who was trying to get in. All my metaphors are driving metaphors now.
Blew up a busload of nuns.
Yeah. I mean, who hasn't committed arson at some point in there? Who hasn't wanted to set fire to some great public building? So think about, and this is this little stretch of writing, but think about the times when you've had the urge to do something bad. And I would say and venture to guess that most people in this room have had the urge to do bad things much more than they've actually done them, or at least thought about, I'm in the grocery store and the clerk is yapping on the phone with his girlfriend or father or something, not paying any attention to me, and, I could just grab this soda and walk out the door. But you wouldn't actually do that. But you can channel that frustration and make the situation more extreme and give a little bit of justification. This is the kind of character who gets impatient easily, and he's like, screw it. I tried to pay for it. The guy's being an ass. I'm just going to shoplift. I'm going to grab the soda and walk out. Sex is a really intimate environment and a great place for people to not communicate, for people to be selfish, for people to be really insecure. And insecurity is a great motivator for people to do bad things, and also a great way to get the reader to sympathize with them. That's
a great example of that is what was his name? Kames Harasaki's character in
the X Anthology.
The X Anthology, where it's like he's the main character, he's an idiot, and I'm reading this story thinking, oh my God, I want to slap this guy. Or just shake him and be like, what the hell are you doing? But you follow the story through to the end because even though he's a dick, you want to know what's going to happen to him.
Right. And Kid is putting ideas into my head. He doesn't have the sophisticated mind whatever that Panther has, but he just whispers in my ear, and that works. A great device in movies is that you establish a character right away as being sympathetic. And there's a couple ways to do that. You can show them in danger. You can show them being funny. The audience immediately likes them. And then you have a little bit of leeway to show them doing terrible things. Actually, a great example that comes to mind is American Beauty. I'm not going to ruin it for anyone who's seen it or who's not seen it, but the very first thing that you hear is the main character saying, this is my life, and at this point I have 6 months to live, so he's going to die, and immediately you're sympathetic with him, even when he decides to try to pick up and screw his daughter's friend in high school who's 15 years old. And one of the things that the screenwriters kind of wrestled with and that they had problems with is, how do you make the audience identify with this guy who is maybe not a pedophile, but he's going after an underage girl, which is kind of a gross thing. And they pull it off. They show his motivation and the reason that he's going into that.
They make him very identifiable in other ways, because he's a man going through a midlife crisis.
Yeah. And he's funny.
And he's funny.
Really sarcastic and funny, which is great.
Yeah, which is something I think a lot of furries can identify with.
Sarcastic, funny?
And quick to anger?
He's not a wizard.
Lol drama.
Lord of the Rings geeks. Who else? Wow, we have quite. Oh, is there a corgi in the back?
We have a hand.
Oh, we have someone here.
We have a fresh face.
All right. The corgi in the back, you have to get your stubby paws up higher if you want us to call on you.
Try bouncing and yapping. Wait, no, please don't.
When you're writing a story and you get through the middle of it and you realize, like, oh God, this is terrible. At what point would you decide to throw it away and start over? Or like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
I know you have recent experience with this.
I do have recent experience with this, actually, on a couple of accounts. Honestly, I think about if I'm having trouble with something and it just has stopped being fun to work on, the idea doesn't excite me, and I think that what I've written is bad, that's where I'll step back and seriously try to reevaluate what I was working on. If I can remember, like, oh, wow, like, I really had, like, high expectations, and, like, this was sort of what I had in mind, and, I'll see if I can try to, put myself back on track to reach that point. But if I'm looking at what I have and I'm like, yeah, now that I've started to write it, I realize that that's not where this story is going. There's no way to really make it go in this interesting place I thought it might go before. I don't think what I have is very good, and I know I'm not going to enjoy writing the rest of it. Then yeah, I'll give up on it at that point.
Yeah, I mean, if you can go back and fix it, you can. But I have a lot of stories that I just abandoned midway through because the idea stopped appealing to me. I'm maybe a little unusual in that I'm always working on 3 or 4 things at the same time. So if one of them gets boring or isn't going the place that I want it to, I just drop it, and I have another idea coming up. So my hard drive is littered with half-finished stories, and sometimes I go back to them and say, "Oh, I need to finish this. This is cool." You have any comments?
Because I had this happen to me not too long ago. I'd say take a break from that idea. Don't ever throw anything away, because you might still have bits and pieces that are usable in that story. But I had a story that I started in 2004, and it got to a point, and I just didn't know where to continue it. So it just sat on my hard drive, and I finished it in 2009. When I picked up that ball again, I was like, okay, I have a direction for this now, and now I know where I want to go with it. But, it wasn't taking up any space or doing any harm just sitting there at that time, and I figured out how to fine-tune it and finish it off later on. So you can go back to those old ideas and do something with them, but just change your focus and work on something else. And it might be days, it might be months,
might be years.
Might be years. You might get back to it eventually or never, but you haven't lost anything by trying.
I know we have a couple other writers out in the audience. Any of you guys have experience with stories that didn't go where you wanted them to, and what did you do about them? Anybody want to chime in? We have one over here.
Oh, no, not
wave
that
at the
guy.
gopher fox until he notices me. I have stories that are incomplete that come in 2 categories. The ones I loved too much to give up on permanently, or the ones that I went, okay, it's been 2 years, I can't do anything with this, it's time to go on. And in that case, if you've already put it out there on the internet, people will never stop asking you about it. Be honest with them. If you've moved on, tell them you've moved on. If it's the one that you still hold a flame for and swear to God you'll finish one day, admit, yeah, that's not going to happen anytime soon, but I still want to finish it one day. And I don't know any writer who doesn't have at least one of those stories somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
There's a reason I don't do serialized fiction anymore, and the reason that I took down the unfinished stuff I did have up online.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else want to chime in on... We have a core. Well, actually, he's right there. So, bring Drenth back on.
Hi. Actually, the story that I got published in Fang 3 was really supposed to be part of a series, and I wrote the first story, and I started writing a second story far in the future, and it didn't at all have the same kind of interest. Once I kind of started thinking about the character, I think he had some neat stuff, but the story I came up with wasn't really as interesting. And didn't even fit the same genre that I wanted to kind of have the series be about. And so I sort of just dropped it, maybe on my hard drive somewhere, but at this point, I don't even know. So yeah, I've had that experience, and it's better just to I think to drop a story you know isn't going to work than to kind of force it into just putting it out there when it's crap and you don't like it.
Yeah, and because generally I think if you end up forcing yourself to continue writing a story and it's not doing what you want it to, it's not going to be a very good result. So, we have one more. I'm filling time until he can get over to Mr. Corgi over here.
We meet again. Yeah, I've actually been in that kind of experience too, where you write a bunch of stories, or you're writing a story and then it just falls apart for you, or you're not sure how you're going to continue, or you just run out of time to do it. Unfortunately with me, when I usually stop that story, it's usually dead, and it stays on my computer forever, and then I click on the file where I've put all the to-be-finished stories, and look at them like carcasses in a meat locker. And that's where I am usually with those, and they just intimidate me. So I'm pretty sure someone else can relate to that feeling too.
So you're not alone. Everybody's had that experience, and the great thing about being a writer is if a story's not working, you can move on to the next one. You have to have confidence in your ability and that it's going to come back, that this isn't the only story you're going to be able to write, that you can start another one and finish it. So, better that than to force yourself to do something you're not excited about.
Yeah, Kyle and I have had the conversation in private about when you get those feelings, it's like, oh.
We've had private conversations about when you get those feelings. What do they mean?
When hair starts to grow where there was no hair before.
Hirosaki-san, I feel funny in gym class.
What's all this white stuff?
Oh, come on, I'm a fox.
Ideas.
Give me some credit.
It's fur, right?
Yes.
No, about... To get back to my original train of thought, that was not at all naughty, and that I just do this
said
sometimes.
Naughty.
I will... her. No,
it's the Fluster the Otter question.
Yes, apparently it is, and I have only myself to blame. No, about how sometimes as a writer, you'll hit a point and, the frustrations you have dealing with one particular story will get you thinking, oh my god, I'm never going to write again. I have run out of all my ideas. Like, the spark is gone. I've used up all the words I will ever write.
Love is dead.
And, obviously, neither of us have hit the point where, we've hit, this moment and we never wrote again. And, the thing is I think that, what Fo said earlier is, if you, an idea is just proving to be too much of a problem, move on. And at that point, it doesn't matter so much if you come back to the old idea or not, as long as you do move on, you're just still writing. As long as you're writing something, even if it's something new, even if it's something different,
even
just
if
keep
it's not a
doing
story, even if it's nonfiction,
Yeah.
write a journal about what happened to you that day. Write a description of the coworker who did something really nice for you. Write a description of the guy who was a jerk at the store. Describe the view out your window. Describe something that happened to you. Just get in the habit of writing.
Write a flamogram to your boss that you will never actually send.
Yeah. Troll on the internet. No, don't do that.
Don't be a beatard, kids.
Who else? Who else has things to say? What else?
Have we intimidated y'all too much?
Something non-what? Oh, like we have a topic. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. Gopher Fox. It's not
I
long
like
enough.
cheesecake.
He says he likes cheesecake.
Yeah. I mean, that's why we're here, right? No.
Yeah. Cheesecake Con.
Do you ever have any problems with some of the first characters that you created kind of sneaking up on you and you want to use them again?
Oh God, all the time.
Yeah.
That's why I have this this universe that this book is in, my Forrester University, which started before Aquifers actually, but Waterways is set in that, Out of Position is set in that, and a lot of the characters keep coming back, especially if you look at some of my short stories online. I tend to bring characters back even as supporting characters in other stories because the way that they appear in my head is that they have lives beyond the stories. And sometimes I think, oh, it would be neat to have these characters, some side characters in a story that, exemplify this thing. And if they're characters that I've already written about somewhere else, then I don't have to make up new people. And I'm lazy. So that's perfect. If I already know who they are, that's great. And as a bonus, the readers like it because then they get to see other characters that they know from other places. And that all works out.
Although I will caution that it is sometimes easy to kind of be self-aggrandizing if you do that route too often. But, I mean, I'm not saying you do that.
No. I'm trying to think of an example of
Russell T Davies, Doctor Who writer. Don't do the big season finale of Out of Position where you have every character from Bridges and every character from Waterways all appear
the big
in the final
Christmas
chapter.
party where everybody shows up at the same time.
And they all have sex together.
I'll write that if he won't.
There's a point where it's going too far, and occasional characters showing up, but when you're doing like the entire cast, or if you've written it to the point where a new person really couldn't understand what the hell was going on unless they had read the other two books.
Yeah, if you start putting in jokes with your earlier characters, then that might be going a bit too far. But if you just introduce them as side characters who have, whatever characteristics of the, that you need in that story, then that works fine. If you want to keep writing stories about their lives, hell, I wrote my first 3 books about the same character because I wrote a short story about him, and then I thought, well, how did he get into that situation? So I wrote a novel about that. And then I thought, well, how did he get out of that situation? And so I wrote a novel about that. And then I thought, what would happen to his son 16 years later? And so I wrote a novel about that. And,
Yeah.
I don't have any more planned.
Yet. Dot.
Yes, ...
And then there were more gay foxes.
Which explains how gay foxes reproduce.
Oh, you certainly explained it quite adequately, I think.
We're going to keep
There
trying.
were very
to get
graphic,
this right.
unpleasant scenes in one of your books.
Yeah, but that wasn't reproduction.
Yeah, but still.
Come on, just because you don't like women.
Just because my mind...
Plant a fox tree in your yard and watch it grow.
The fox never falls far from the tree.
Plow the fox plantation. Speaking of not relying too much on in-jokes.
I'm sure Drenth has some kind of euphemisms for that from previous podcasts, but making little foxes, wasn't that one of them? Making more foxes.
Yeah.
Okay, who wants to stop us from talking about painful euphemisms?
I want to stop us from that, but I don't know how to. We can't stop. We're going too fast.
Well, along the topic of bringing back characters, because this seems like the best segue we're going to get to this announcement, I had put up a challenge recently on my live journal where Fuzzwolf and I had been talking about the release of Bridges, and he said, I ordered a bunch of copies, and I'm pretty sure I'll have enough for Furry Fiesta and FWA. And I said, okay, let's prove him wrong.
Which I wouldn't mind.
Which he said he wouldn't mind, so he said it was okay for me to do it. So I said, if he sells enough that he has to reorder Bridges before FWA, I'll write a new story with at least one and maybe more of these characters, and I'll post it online for free, and everyone can read it and so on. And Fuzz came up to me early this afternoon and said, so I reordered Bridges today for FWA.
2 days, people. Pat yourselves on the back.
So thank you all very much for that. That's awesome. You guys are terrific. I hope people have said they liked the first chapter, and a couple people who've read the book said they liked it, but I'm still nervous about it. So I hope all those people who bought it will like it, and I will be posting something on the live journal to let people decide who the story ends up being about. And it was totally not an excuse for me to just write another story with a 3-way.
So if you need more excuses for that, I can try to provide them for you.
Yes, you've already supplied plenty of inspiration for this one. Thank you very much. You're mentioned in the dedication.
Thank you very much. I was actually super surprised to see that when Fuzzwolf sneakily mailed you that copy, and I was like, "Oh, hey, the book arrived!" And I opened the first page, and I was like, "Oh."
It was sweet.
It was.
He gets all emotional. He gets emo tears.
I've never been so touched and heartfelt about being credited in a book about 3-way sex.
Have you ever been previously credited in a book about three-way sex?
No, but that's besides the point.
I
think that's a very large part of the point.
I wish I'd been there to see y'all's reactions when you got the package in the mail.
I was very waggy. Pound wag.
Or your little sheep. I'm very amused at our Twitter hashtags. Kyle and I text each other, and you started texting me pound wag in
you did
text
too.
messages.
I
texted
me back with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, if any of y'all use the Twitter and use the pound wag hashtag and see if we can't, I don't know.
Let's get a trending topic.
I'd really like to get it trending. I really like to see what we'd have to do to get the entire furry fandom to wag at the same time.
Yeah, the closest I can get is the pound rudder swish,
Yeah.
which Atari started.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed saying that.
That's a good one, too.
Yeah, like otters don't really wag. We just kind of sway.
You do, but you sway very enticingly.
Yeah, so we're slinky.
Yes, and oily, apparently, hallucinogenically oily.
Oh, hey, now don't give away too much of my secrets.
Pre-lubricated for your convenience.
Oh, it's better than that. Hopefully you'll get to see what I mean before too long.
Oh, my.
Yeah. Wow, that totally came out wrong. No, it came out exactly the way I should have intended it to.
We'll have more inspirations for three-way stories for you.
Hey, now.
I'm totally open to all kinds of inspiration. From this...
You heard it here first, folks.
At this point, the lights in the panel room were turned low.
Well, this is a three-way podcast.
That's true.
I'm actually not in the middle of this podcast. We have an otter in the middle.
Yay!
That makes him rudder swish, I think.
I think it does.
Canid dominance.
Yes. Well, I think Hirosaki might have to take a break.
No, I'm good.
We know you're good, but you might still have to take a break.
Will you let me?
I'm going to have to think about that one. Well, how are people feeling? Anything else to talk about? We have a few people to thank at the end of this, and we're about 20 minutes from 11, so... Any more? We have a great audience here. It's at least, 200 people, you say?
200 at least.
Yeah. I'm going to say 3. We have like half of Furry Fiesta here. It's awesome.
So our if you guys don't have questions, we have one question for you guys. What did you come here hoping to see? Just sort of
a three-way, apparently.
A three-way pod.
Do three-way.
Can we just have them yell things out? So if you just hold up the mic and let them just yell out stuff. What did you expect? Did we fulfill your expectations? Are you leaving here sated? No pants and no sheaths.
Honestly, I was expecting nothing, and I came here, very much enjoyed the podcast.
Awesome, thank you.
I like it, so.
Thank you.
I think you delivered some advice, gave us a lot of humor, and so you delivered on those expectations. So, awesome.
Cool.
You promised cake and blowjobs.
That you did not deliver on.
We didn't promise that.
That's after the podcast.
Once the podcast is produced, then there might be promises added to the beginning of the podcast.
When we're all safely home.
Yes, when we're all safely away from here.
I'm going to drive a full 10 minutes away from here.
Yeah, Taryn may make you make good on whatever promises we make.
Sex with my mate, whatever will I do?
Oh, no.
Stop in the middle to describe it.
I'll do it while he's binding books.
I had noticed that sex with my mate had become so played out. I'm not a terrible person.
No, you're the one who can say that.
Yeah.
You're the non-mated one on this podcast.
It helps inspire me to write about really filthy things, which I actually don't do enough of, really, anyway.
You don't.
You should write more filth.
Oh, there's plenty of filth in the story I'm working on now. I have like 3,000 plus word sex scene in it. Yeah. That's my promise from me to you. Keep your eyes open.
It's actually 2,998 words of descriptions, and then he came. Anyone else? Anyone else want to talk about what did you think you were going to get? And did we give it to you?
Well, I like to say that I enjoyed the show, and I got one more question.
Sure.
Did you ever feel like you were being portrayed in any of the characters you wrote?
I get this. I think we all get this question a fair amount.
Yeah.
As a writer, I'm gonna sort of cop out. I'm gonna say, as a writer, there's a part of you in every character that you write. However, there are certainly some characters that I've written that are more like me than other characters. For instance, if the character is a fox, that's probably more like me because that's what I identify with.
Hayward is a fox.
Hayward is a fox, but the other characters in the book are all also foxes. So, they're all me, except not.
So you can say that there's a piece of Kyle in all of these different foxes, from varying angles and ends.
I once said to a friend after watching the movie Balto that Jenna looked like she had a little fox in her, and he said, "I don't think that's true." And I said, "Well, maybe she should have a little fox in her." And he didn't like that. We're not friends anymore.
You, as far as the podcast goes, for mentioning the new Roar submission. I was happy to hear that, as I have somewhat of a vested interest.
This is our buddy Confused and podcasting wine provider for this episode,
Yes.
for which we have to thank you. Hooray!
Yeah, that was the thing about the podcast. I was going to say I was minorly disappointed in. I was kind of hoping to at least sample the wine that I had provided for the podcast, since I wanted
Come on
to know
down
if
and
it was any
come on
good.
down and get some. We got some right here.
Come down.
Come get some.
We'll give it to you. All you have to do is ask.
The tech-savvy wolf will pour you
the
cup.
or as we call the wine providers of the podcast, the otter lubricants.
Hey.
Rudder swish.
Rudder swish.
Rudder. Pound rudder swish.
Pound rudder swish. First comes the pound, then comes the rudder swish.
I don't even know where the pound comes from. That's like old school. Everyone says hash now.
That's true.
Any other comments?
We're old school, though.
We also want to thank Siani and his mate for providing the Coke Zero, or the Fox Energizer, as we say.
I thank the Con Suite for my bottle of Diet Coke.
And Furry Fiesta in general for being awesome and allowing us to sit here and blab into microphones in front of y'all for like an hour and a half. The con has been great, and in fact, the process of getting a live podcast show at Furry Fiesta, I believe, took approximately 5 minutes. I think I texted Fuzzwolf and said, "Hey, can we do a live Unsheathed show at Furry Fiesta?" And he said, "Hang on, I'll ask the con chair." And then 5 minutes later he says it's okay. And that was it. These guys have been tremendous. They put on an awesome convention for you guys here. Let's hear it for Furry Fiesta and how awesome they are. And for you all listening at home, 2011. We'll be back.
Awesome. And being the Furry Fiesta staff member here, thank you very much for your appreciation, and we'll be very happy to have you back here for year 3.
We're very excited about it. And lastly, thank all of you guys out there for coming and spending your 2 hours here listening to us ramble on about blowjobs and I don't know,
otter lubricants,
hallucinogenic otter lubricants, and three-ways and such.
Spit roasting.
Spit roasting. When we know that there's a dance going on right next door, and there's all kinds of other stuff going on at a convention, this is super cool. And I think, do we have anything else? Did I cover everything? Oh yeah, that's true. So we're gonna tease all the people that are listening to this on the podcast after the thing and say, at 11 o'clock in about 15 minutes, I will be reading an excerpt from the first draft, so it's still a little bit rough, not in that way, of the sequel to Out of Position, which is targeted to hit stores at Further Confusion 2011. I'm doing this because Furry Fiesta was awesome and invited me here as a guest of honor, and I wanted to do something for them. I do not normally share first drafts with anyone but Kit, and this will
sometimes me.
This will not. No, you usually get it after I've finished it and gone through it again.
That's try to.
It's a little smoother for you.
Yes,
goes down
needs
easier.
to be lubricated. This is something that will not be aired in public again until at least the fall when the book's done and I'm trying to promote it. So if you're interested in hearing that, stick around. And if you're on the podcast, sorry, it was awesome. You should come to Furry Fiesta next year, or
Fuzz will be sad.
Or Fuzz will be sad.
You
or
can
tell
make Fuzz happier by buying lots of copies of Bridges from him.
At FurPlanet.com.
Or tell your local convention that there's a couple of writers that will do cool things for them if they just invite them around.
I love drinking wine and talking about sex in front of an audience willing to listen to me.
And we're happy to do that. So you guys who are here, stick around. You guys on the podcast, thank you for listening. And all you guys here, thank you very much. We're signing off live from Furry Fiesta. I'm Kyle Gold.
I'm Cam Hirosaki.
And I'm Fuzzwolf.
Good night.